October 13th, 1944. The broken, choking city of Aachen, Germany. The air hangs thick with pulverized stone and the sour smell of burnt cordite. Up ahead, Feldwebel Erich Müller, a veteran of the long, freezing retreat from the east, hugs the damp, rubble-strewn wall of a chocolate factory. His breath hisses out in white plumes. Beside him, 3 men of the 116th Panzer Division wait. They're armed with the standard issue, the Karabiner 98K bolt-action rifle, a masterpiece of precise German engineering and marksmanship. 5 heavy 7.92mm rounds, chambered one at a time, each shot a calculated economy of force. German doctrine prized the accuracy of the single rifleman. They had been taught for years that the American infantryman was soft, undisciplined, and relied on slow-loading semi-automatic rifles. They were ready for a textbook exchange of fire. The American squad they were stalking rounds the corner of the pulverized street. Müller barks the order, "Feuer!" and the sharp, disciplined crack-thwack of the K98K rifles echoes through the ruined streets. 2 Americans stumble and fall. Müller reaches to cycle his bolt, ejecting the spent brass, chambering the 3rd round in a practiced motion. This is the moment of vulnerability, the heartbeat of silence where the superior German soldier reloads, re-aims, and dominates the brief pause. But this time, the silence never comes. Instead, the street explodes. It is not the measured crack of aimed fire or the steady rhythmic drumbeat of an MG-42 machine gun. This sound is different. It is a terrifying, uncontrolled shriek, a manic, high-speed rattle that fills the entire urban canyon. It sounds like someone has opened a hose valve directly into the brickwork. It is the sound of dozens of heavy 45 caliber rounds being vomited into the air at over 600 rounds per minute. The Americans are not aiming, they are simply holding the triggers down, walking a curtain of lead indiscriminately across Müller's position. Wood splinters and stone chips fly into Müller's face. He is pinned, not by superior tactical position, but by sheer impossible volume. The psychological core of his training, discipline, precision, economy, is being drowned out by the metallic, manic thunder of American industrial contempt. This is not fighting, he thinks, the barrel of his K98K hot against his cheek. This is simply drowning. It is a sudden, terrifying realization. They were not facing soldiers, they were facing a factory. And that factory, quite literally, was spraying bullets like water. Feldwebel Müller's squad is pinned. The primary sound is still the high-speed rattle of the American weapon, but now, above the percussive din, he hears the slower, measured clatter of American rifle bolts. It's sporadic, insignificant, completely subservient to the dominant, angry voice of the automatic fire. He risks a glance. The weapon responsible is ugly and heavy, a crude, bulky profile held loosely in the hands of a young American private who looks more terrified than disciplined. It is the Thompson Submachine Gun, the Tommy gun, a weapon with a dark cinematic heritage rooted in the organized crime of prohibition, built not for marksmanship, but for devastating volume. Firing the heavy, devastating 45 caliber round, the Thompson wasn't about penetration or long-range accuracy. It was about filling a confined space with lead, shredding cover, and forcing heads down. The German equivalent, the Maschinenpistole 40 or MP40, was a fine weapon, but it was carefully regulated, a specialist tool issued primarily to platoon leaders and select assault troops. Its rate of fire was slower, more controllable, designed to be used in short, disciplined bursts. But the American Army, the arsenal of democracy, viewed firepower through a different lens. They could afford to be wasteful. The Thompson was often deployed in company-level weapon pools, not reserved for an elite few, but distributed freely to any troop going into the meat grinder of urban fighting. To the disciplined German soldier, every bullet had a cost, a measured value of steel and gunpowder. To the American, the bullet was an expendable commodity. This meant the entire tactical reality of the firefight had flipped. Mueller and his men, trained to rely on the brief critical reload pause, now faced an enemy who treated their weapon like an endless automatic hose. The doctrine was simple: suppress, then move. The Thompson didn't need to kill instantly, it just needed to stop the enemy from fighting back, allowing the accompanying M1 Garands and the flanking elements to advance. Mueller, crawling through the wreckage, hears the distinctive sound of an American sergeant shouting orders over the din. He realizes the terrifying truth. The individual German soldier, however skilled, could not win a firefight against the collective industrial expendable firepower of the United States Army. The Thompson, loud and ugly, was broadcasting an inescapable message to every German soldier pinned in that street. You are running out of everything. Your enemy is not.
Mueller doesn't realize it, but he is witnessing the ultimate consequence of two opposing industrial philosophies. Germany, under the direction of men like Ferdinand Porsche, prioritized complicated, over-engineered weapons, the Tiger tank, the specialized aircraft, believing quality would inevitably triumph over the enemy's perceived lack of sophistication. This resulted in weapons that were superb on paper, but difficult and slow to produce and maintain. The American strategy was the exact opposite, a direct descendant of the Fordist philosophy of mass production. The Thompson, which Mueller despises as crude, was the perfect manifestation of this doctrine. Easy to manufacture in staggering volumes with little customization. The psychological dimension is key here. The American private holding the trigger did not fear running out of ammunition. He knew the supply chain, stretching thousands of miles across the Atlantic, was already working to replace every .45 caliber round he fired, sometimes within days. This industrial assurance gave the American infantrymen an unprecedented tactical license, the license to waste. In the rubble of Aachen, Mueller is not just fighting the men in front of him, he is fighting the entirety of the Detroit arsenal, the California shipyards, and the vast, untouched manufacturing heartland of America. The rapid-fire chaos of the Thompson proved that the logistical assumptions of the German high command had been fundamentally flawed. They had bet their entire war on the idea that they could out-engineer the enemy, that their blitzkrieg would end the war before American industrial power could fully awaken. They were wrong. The Americans, whom Hitler had ideologically dismissed as soft and incapable of serious fighting, were now deploying a level of firepower that mocked German discipline. The sound of that 600 rounds per minute barrage was more than just noise. It was the audible confirmation of an insurmountable production miracle. Mueller's precision rifle, the 5-round instrument of tactical economy, was suddenly obsolete, rendered meaningless by the deluge of lead. The only way to survive the Thompson shock was to realize, instantly, that the tactical rules they had mastered, the slow, careful reload, the single-aimed shot, no longer applied. The war, for Feldwebel Mueller, was no longer a matter of German skill, but American arithmetic.
The experience of Feldwebel Mueller in Aachen was a localized tactical trauma, but the systemic, overwhelming scale of American production first delivered its strategic shock far earlier, not in the ruins of a German city, but on the beaches of North Africa. Adolf Hitler harbored a deep ideological disdain for the United States. He viewed Americans as racially soft, overly materialistic, and fundamentally incapable of the sustained, vicious combat required for a global war. He confidently predicted that American intervention through mass deliveries of planes and war materials will not change the outcome of the war. This deep-seated ideological arrogance led to a colossal failure of strategic intelligence, dismissing the U.S. capacity for mobilization. Then came Operation Torch in November 1942. What Hitler received on his intelligence reports was not a trickle of supplies or a handful of experimental weapons, but a tidal wave of force, 850 ships carrying 100,000 U.S. troops inbound to the North African coast.
This was an organizational and logistical miracle achieved across a vast ocean, designed to sustain not a single battle, but an entire theater of operations. The sheer, massive scale of the deployment shattered Hitler's core assumption. He was reportedly completely shocked. The realization was immediate and terrifying. The nation he had dismissed as weak was capable of mobilizing and projecting power on a scale that dwarfed the combined might of his initial blitzkrieg. It was the sudden, overwhelming arithmetic of the American economy made manifest in transport ships and infantry divisions. This deployment forced an immediate, costly diversion of crucial German resources that were critically needed on the Eastern Front, where the Wehrmacht was already beginning to falter at Stalingrad. The Thompson SMG, firing 600 rounds per minute, was the sound of industrial dominance on a tactical level. Operation Torch was the visual, strategic proof of that dominance, a warning Hitler refused to heed until it was too late. The cost of American bullets was ultimately the price of German hubris.
The strategic shock of Operation Torch was followed by the psychological warfare of overwhelming, casual abundance. This material superiority extended beyond the massive deployment of men and arms. It reached into the most mundane and symbolic aspects of logistical support. The rations. Feldwebel-Mueller's memory of the Aachen firefight is dominated by the sound of the Thompson, but for the senior German command, the defeat was cemented not by the sound of bullets, but by the sight of luxury. One account, often repeated among post-D-Day units, told of an American supply parachute overshooting its target and landing deep behind German lines. A German general, surveying the contents of the container, paused. Amidst the specialized field rations and fresh supplies, he saw a chocolate cake. This was not a necessary military item. This was a comfort, a frivolous luxury treated as disposable enough to drop from the sky and risk losing in enemy territory. The general, reportedly, remarked that Germany would lose the war. Why? Because the cake demonstrated an industrial base so robust, so confident in its output, that it could treat non-essential comfort items as basic supply. This stood in stark contrast to the standard German rations, which were austere and strictly practical, hard, non-perishable products like Knackebrot, Hartzwieback, and Hartkeks. German logistics were a desperate struggle for sustainability. American logistics were a confident demonstration of effortless surplus. This truth was magnified later in the war within the American prisoner of war camps, such as Hearn and Shelby. Captured German soldiers, who had been subsisting on meager frontline rations, were shocked to discover the quantity and quality of food provided by their American captors. America's ability to feed its enemies better than the Third Reich could consistently feed its own fighting men was not just a logistical reality, it was the ultimate humiliating indictment of the Nazi ideological fantasy. The Thompson was the tactical proof of the arsenal of democracy. The chocolate cake was the psychological proof that the war was not just lost, it was unwinnable.